Is warehousing the next big hot property in India? Welcome to The Real Deal. There's much buzzing in India's warehousing space, which is part and parcel of India's logistics story. Big global investors, right from Warburg Pincus to Ascendas-Firstspace, are putting both their money and their might behind warehousing. A report by Knight Frank India says that the returns in this sector as India moves to a seamless nationwide market thanks to GST could be as mouth-watering as 20% plus for smart and early investors. Now let's give you a glimpse of what's been happening in this space before we bring you industry experts to tell us what lies ahead. Because warehousing is an integral part of logistics, we will start with the numbers from the economic survey on what the potential size is. Now total size in 2018 for the sector is $160 billion. Going up to $215 billion US dollars, and that's an expected growth of 10.5% if you take 2020. Warehousing alone constitutes roughly 1/4 of this opportunity. The tipping point for this sector, of course, came with GST, and therefore what we've done is to look at the numbers pre-GST and post-GST. Now in 2014, if you look at the million square feet supply of warehousing space, it was about 86. It went up to about 213 by 2016. But look at the change post-GST. 140 million square feet in 2017. In 2018, it went up by 30 million square feet to touch 170. And of course, by 2021, it's estimated to touch almost 300 million square feet. But it just wasn't GST, which has been the tipping point for large institutional investors to enter the segment. There are a host of reasons. Infrastructure status for logistics and transport was a big one. Then there's a dedicated freight corridor playing its part, and of course 100% FDI in the sector has been the biggest move. There's also a large opportunity still remaining to consolidate the market. It's still very fragmented, dominated by unorganized players, and majority of the warehousing space, even today, as per Collier's India data, measures less than 10,000 square feet. Who's taking up the space and who are the big occupiers, especially of the organized retail or organized warehousing? It is retail, starting with the big e-commerce companies, Amazon, Myntra, Flipkart, and of course Decathlon. But of course, FMCG, traditional occupiers, Walmart, Reliance, ITC, and Philips are some of the big names. Manufacturing is Hero, Honda, Samsung, and Mahindra. And you have traditional logistics companies also there, Gati and Safe Express, who need warehousing to put their parcels. Now, some of these retailers are building their own warehouses, but most of the others need grade A, modern, intelligent, large plate spaces. And that's the reason why some of these big names have entered into this space over the last 3 to 4 years. Indospace, Embassy Industrial, ESR, Ascendas-Firstspace, Mahindra Life Spaces, and Panchsheel, a mix of both international and Indian players. There's definitely a rising institutional interest, but of course, money is not going so much into acquisitions as it is into actually new developments or setting up new places. Let's take a look at some of the big deals and money flows since the tide has turned favorable for this business. I'm going to start with the latest year, 2018. So you have Alliance Real Estate, Eshank Redwood or ESR committing $1 billion. You have Ascendas Property Fund, Arcia committing $83 million. Then in 2017, you had Ascendas-Firstspace Realty joint venture committing about $600 million. You also have a Indospace Fund 3 committing $500 million. Evan HQ Cambridge Quad Real Property committing $400 million. And Assets Group Logos, similar amounts. Mahindra Life Space, IFC combined committing $50 million. While the next 5 years continue to offer great opportunities in India's warehousing space, let's find out from some of the market leaders and industry experts on what lies ahead. Anshul Singhal, CEO of Embassy Industrial Park, joins us. We also have with us Alok Bunia. He's the CEO of Ascendas-Firstspace. Joe Verghese, MD Colliers International, and Divyanshu Tambe, Executive Director, Transport and Logistics, EY India. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. And I think the first question would be to Anshu. I think Embassy Industrial Park was an early mover into this space. I don't think they waited for either GST or the FDI to come in. So what really made Embassy take a big bet and so early in the game?
So it's a question we get very often, and I think across the group, if you see, Embassy has always moved into space early. We're the first ones that started the office revolution in India. We made the first office park. We brought in co-living into India, which is WeWork, which we were the first one to do that. And of course, industrial parks, which is what I look after, which is what we started at a little ahead of its time, because we predicted that it was a very obvious look for us that the way India is growing, the way GST talks are happening, the way the economy is booming, consumption is going in. Basically, if you just see, India has a mobile phone base of about 1 billion users. And if you just compare that with America, America is about 350 million. And 1 billion people growing at 8%, you can imagine about 600 million people will be in Indian cities over the next 10 years. Now, today it's about 350 million. 600 million people in Indian cities would basically mean double that of the United States. These people will need more places to eat, more places to live, more places to work, more places to sleep, more places to, just go out and hang out. And all this drives up consumption. So whether there's GST or not GST, the minute consumption goes up, these cities need a big back end, and that back end is warehousing. So that was a very obvious thing to us when we started this company, and the way we've grown in the last 3 years, we already secured development lands over 13 million square feet. So we will soon have a 13 million square feet under development. We have an active pipeline of 35 million square feet, and we've already have lease commitments of close to 5 million square feet, and we'll have operational space for about 2 million square feet very soon.
Okay, those are good numbers. In fact, I remember interviewing Jeetu Virvani about 4 years ago, and he said warehousing is actually a big real estate play. Don't look at it as a logistics play. Alok Bunia, of course, there's been a turnaround around 2017, but do you believe that the opportunity will continue to remain big over the next few years, because the commitment from Ascendas is pretty hefty as well?
Yeah, I think as we discussed in the beginning, the growth in the warehousing space that we are seeing today is driven by, in my opinion, about 3 or 4 factors. One of that is the consumption, and more importantly, the consumption is now being fulfilled by more organized players, which is the organized retail or e-commerce, which has opportunities to moving into an organized logistics play compared to the earlier cases where it was more unorganized. And second is obviously the structural changes with respect to GST. And I think the third and most important factors, which I don't see so much in the press, which is happening in the industry, is consolidation and modernization. So if you look at the numbers that you are looking at, significant growth of over 30 or 35%, large part of that is being driven by consolidation and modernization, not necessarily by GST. I think all the players, or the large number of players, are still on the drawing board and figuring out how to distribute their logistics based on the GST. So GST growth is still to come. And therefore, for next 3 to 4 years, the growth what we are looking at is going to come from e-commerce, consolidation and modernization, and GST is going to be another boon which is going to be there at least for following 3 to 4 years. So in our opinion, given the country, given the growth of GDP and consumption growth that we are seeing, we see there is a consistent growth of over 20-25% in this sector, and we see that being there for at least next 6 to 7 years.
Wow.
And that is the reason why Ascendas, who was an early entrant in the market in real estate development, continues to be bullish in the logistics space as well.
Okay, fair enough. 20 to 25%, 6 to 7 years. And what you're saying is that, the opportunity which GST offers is just about beginning. I mean, people are still at the drawing board stage. Joe Verghese, would you agree? I mean, if I look at the way monies have gone in, 67% of the funds are going in, though, to create new spaces. If there is already available consolidation, opportunity, then I would expect probably more number of existing incumbent players to be gobbled up, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be an assumption that we would make, but the ground reality is that most of those supply in the market are not supply that could give you scale. I think you yourself pointed out most of these warehouses, that exist in the market are on an average 10,000, 20,000 square feet warehouses that don't give you the benefit of scale. So that's one reason. Second, they are not of the kind of quality that institutional investors would want to pick up. I'm not saying that all of them are like that, but in cases where they don't fall under these restrictions, you are seeing some of the acquisitions, again, those that you mentioned, that have happened in the last 3-4 years, where people have tied up with the local players and consolidated and are gaining scale. I think the other reason that we should look at from a perspective of an investor on why investors, institutional investors, like you mentioned, Warburg logos, all coming into the market, is the clarity on an exit mechanism through REITs. Anshul mentioning, saying that Embassy is going to be the first one that is going to come in the market with REITs. I think with last 2 years we've got clarity that exits can happen through REITs. That has actually shortened the time that it would take for this sector to grow from becoming from being a totally unorganized, low quality asset class sector owned by small retail investors to a sector that we are seeing in the commercial real estate industry, where all the assets are high quality, are scalable, and more importantly, when they are offloaded as REITs in the market, give an opportunity to retail investors to take part in the upside that normally institutional investors would get.
Okay, fair enough. Divyanshu Tambe, 2 questions to you. Number one, 20 to 25% sort of growth for the next 6 to 7 years. Would you be able to say that confidently as well? And number two, if this is all about not finding enough opportunities to consolidate, which means then everybody is looking out for new land parcels, isn't it?
So let me take a step back and tell you about why this investment is coming, and will the growth therefore will be for the industry or for some of the organized players. I think we need to differentiate 2 parts. Let me share with you that the cargo movement in a country is looked upon by most investment gurus as a barometer for economic activity. So today we are moving about 3 billion ton of cargo in this country and delivering a GDP of 2.8 trillion. Now that's $1,000 per ton. The idea behind becoming more efficient as an economy and delivering these goods at lower cost, and that's where warehousing plays a role, is extremely important for us as a country. I think 25% growth question that you talked about, I would definitely have, we'll see some of the companies growing even faster. But as an industry, I would still peg the growth at about somewhere between 12 to 15%. What will happen, as speakers before me did talk about, that there is a lot of organization that is happening, and that will mean that the organized players will grow at a faster pace. And the kind of pace that we have been able to witness in last 5 years, just to give you a sense, out of that 150-170 million square feet, more than 50% has come up in last 5 years. And the expectation is that we will probably be doing that faster going forward.
Talking about India's growth story, now Make in India at least hasn't really taken off as much as we had hoped for. Investments have been pretty dull. In fact, new laws or not, let's not get into that debate. Indian logistics and warehousing, that's where the big global investors are sensing a hefty opportunity. And large plate modern warehousing facilities armed with latest technology will play an important role in bringing down logistic costs, which are currently at 13 to 14% of GDP of India. And we need to match almost half of this cost, which is at 7 to 8% of GDP in developed countries. A huge opportunity, as our panelists have said right before the break, $2.8 trillion economy and 3 billion cargo packages which are getting transferred. My big question here, and I'm going to go back to the big players, Anshul Singhal, first over to you, is that, we keep talking about this big opportunity on every front when it comes to India's economy. But the last 1 year, whether you look at Make in India or you look at, just the investments which are going into manufacturing and new plants, etc., they haven't been very exciting. Other than the e-commerce play, others have been a little bit duller than what we anticipated. Are you building in any of those risk factors into your business growth?
The biggest challenge in the sector is always and will continue to remain land buying. The other big challenge in the sector will continue to remain compliance, right? So even today, most of this 140 million square feet stock that you have in the country, majority of the stock is non-compliant. Now, what's happening is that there are two types of demands available today. Before GST comes in, before we talk about considering risk factors, before we talk about considering, the impact of consolidation, there is pure displacement demand. So the minute you build large, clean parks, which are 100% compliant, which have good quality construction, the floor doesn't leak, the slab doesn't sink, there's a good human environment to work in, customers would leave those old shoddy buildings, which are 20,000, 50,000 square feet, and move to these new big fulfillment centers or warehouses, as we call it, just out of displacement requirement, right?
Okay.
And then if you add consolidation to that, a guy or a customer who was working in a 50,000 or a 30,000 square feet shoddy go down, not a warehouse, and now he's moving to a building that what Embassy would build or Ascendas would build, would be moving into that, which would be a nice grade A facility,
okay.
200,000, 500,000. So in the last 4 years since we started the company, we've seen box sizes increase 10 times. Right? We've seen rentals go up.
So what I'm hearing is that the displacement opportunity itself is very, very huge, Anshul, isn't it? So land buying then remains critical. And if everybody, which is including e-commerce players and manufacturing companies themselves now looking and seeking out great land parcels, is that going to now become a big cost factor to consider in the business going forward? Land is no longer going to remain cheap.
Well, fortunately for warehousing, if it's not like an office address, so you're very, very careful about where you have your office address. So somebody wants to set out of a BKC or a Connaught Place or an MG Road, but in warehousing, if you can go 5 kilometers left or 10 kilometers right, it doesn't really make or break the story.
Okay.
But the most important thing in warehousing and buying land is not just the location. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. No, you complete that and then I will move to the other guest.
Sure. So the most important thing is not just the location, but it's a factor of the shape of land, the zoning, the ability to get planning permissions and approvals, connectivity to airports, connectivity to highways, connectivity to railway stations. So it's a mixture of factors buying land, and that's really the art of the business. That's the heart of the business as well.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that land prices are going to go crazily expensive, but it's always going to be difficult to buy good land.
All right, Alok Bunia, I would say with everything that Anshul Singhal has spelled out, we are now talking about literally, even in warehousing, trying to get something with the right configuration, with great connectivity. Yes, if it's the art and heart of warehousing business, how many people have the expertise? And will more global investors now be interested or continue to be interested in this space?
Yeah, so that is the reason why you will find that even all the global investors who are looking at this space are trying to get into this space with partnering with a local developer or partnering with a local partner who can navigate this particular situation. Unlike in a real estate situation where you will find that out of all the private equity investors who are there, 90% of the players are pure play private equity investors. Whereas in this space, if you look at it, all the 5 or 6 big names you talked about, all of them are coming out with a model where they are trying to become developers themselves. And the reason for that is, unlike other parts of the real estate, this is a little different ball game and a long-term play. And therefore, you need to develop that capability so that you can do this business on a long-term basis, because there exist opportunities. And as Anshul mentioned, I mean, this is a very, very critical expertise, and you gain that over a period of time by doing that stuff on ground. And the local players in India, whether it's the embassy or Indospace, which had been doing there in India, or Firstspace, what we had been doing in India for quite some time,
will be
critical. That is the reason all the foreign institutional investors, absolutely, they are partnering so that they become successful.
Okay. I'm going to go to Divyanshu Tambe. Divyanshu, you talked about, the entire logistics space and, of course, warehousing sitting critical there. Great story. So tell me, I mean, we already have a very interesting mix of investors here, partnering with local developers as well. That's why right at the beginning I said not just money, but also their might behind the warehousing in India. How many more can we expect? Do you believe that there'll be many new additions of institutional investors this year in 2019?
So let me start by clarifying the growth part first. As Mr. Singhal mentioned, what I meant by industry growth is we have 1 billion square feet today as the industry size. That is, in my view, likely to go by 12 to 15%. Of that, modern warehousing today, requirement-wise, it is not there. We have about 150 million square feet of modern warehousing. Today, as we speak, we need that 500 million square feet as of yesterday. So modern warehousing obviously will grow much faster, and that could be north of 30-35% as well, because the demand already exists, as mentioned. It's more of a market share gains, adoption from old school warehousing to modern warehousing. And that modern warehousing, on top of that, we, out of that 550 that we need today, with the growth in the economy and the e-commerce bringing in additional incremental demand, we will require, in my view, doubling of that capacity in next 5 years, 7 years. So at a company level, I won't even be surprised if they keep doubling every year, because the demand is already there. You're addressing a older
that's what he said, displacement demand remains, right?
Absolutely. So I just wanted to clarify that point first. In terms of capital, as I said, given the structural changes that have happened, given the comfort that one seeks as an investor, long-term investor, GST, e-way bill, and even to an extent IBC, which has brought in the credit discipline, I think I would expect more and more investment to happen in this sector. We have had about $4.5 billion in last 5 years. I won't be surprised if we increase, if we see increase of that by about 50 to 70% or probably more. I would also expect, this is more like a new investment which will go into building the capacity. I would also expect churn of capital in that, driving further, capital flows in the country and in the sector.
Okay, fair enough. Final word from Joe Verghese. Sorry, we're running out of time and I do need to get Joe in. So Joe, the other big thing that at least IPC seems to be talking about why money is going to flow into warehousing is they talk about just the cap rates coming down in office space and commercial. So warehousing seems to be the next big one. You also spoke about REIT, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we will see the first REIT this year. Do you believe that, if the land prices continue to rise and if that becomes a big problem, maybe the cap rates there might come into a little bit of pressure, or that's not 2019, not 2020, maybe ahead?
Yeah, so when and I'm assuming you're talking about industrial REIT cap rates.
Yes.
So what we have seen across global markets, especially where you have retail REITs, which is shopping complexes and malls, and industrial REITs, there seems to be a gain that industrial REITs are having, and there seems to be compression of industrial REIT cap rates, while the retail REIT cap rates are actually increasing. So we expect that the same phenomenon will pretty much happen here in India. This is actually an opportunity, and I think we've not spoken enough on that part. It's a big opportunity because of e-commerce. You rattled off the amount of space companies like Amazon and Flipkart and all are taking up. They're taking up a significant amount of office space, and industrial warehousing space, and that will continue. And I think India is a big market for them, and they see it as that. So I actually see the demand for warehousing space far exceeding the supply for the next 10 years, which will ensure that the cap rates will remain quite competitive.
All right, Joe Varghese. So we're going to end on that note. Here am I. Or let's say here I am already playing the devil's advocate, while everybody on the panel believes that there are many, many good years left for India's warehousing story. Anshul Singhal, Alok Bunia, Joe Varghese and Divyanshu Tambe, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today. Seems like the story has a lot of leg, lot of steam left, and many more organized players are going to get into India's warehousing space as 2019 unfolds. Thank you so much for joining me.